welcome Jamie Davis and Nicole Grotepas. Did I say that?
Yes.
You
Yep.
did. You
Nice
did.
job.
It's pronounced Davis, so you did a good
Oh,
job.
yeah. Jamie.
Right, so tell me about this project that you're collaborating on.
I guess I'll go first. So there's an urban fantasy anthology that's out there for submissions, and I was tapped out a little bit with the time that I had in my production schedule, but I really wanted to contribute something towards it, and I was helping curate it. I felt like I could maybe make some time, and happened to, in a moment of serendipity, meet Nicole as we were doing our clubhouse chats on every Tuesday, and we just connected with the ideas, what was going on in one of my urban fantasy universes. We just were spitballing ideas and things happen. What's your memory of it, Nicole?
I knew your series had a healthcare kind of element to them, the urban fantasy. And I had just had a chat with my sister, who's a pathologist. I ran this hilarious idea by her that you should do like bones on urban. I was like, I'm going to ask Jamie about it. And so I tossed it to you because I was like, maybe Jamie could do it. Because it's a great kind of idea, kind of supernatural elements with combining pathology and forensic science a little bit in the human body. So I tossed it to you and you were like, I love that idea. Let's chat. And I was like, sweet. So that's how I remember it. And I think I would have been happy if you'd taken it and been like, I love it and I'm going to do a series on it. But you were like, let's consider collaboration. I've had collaborations, but nothing's gone as well as this one for me with Jamie.
That's interesting, because my next question was, have either of you collaborated before? Which is a ridiculous question because I know for a fact that Jamie has, but I don't know about you.
Yeah, I had a collaboration with another author and mostly it was fine. There were just some issues at the end and some things that were difficult with communication. So we parted ways and I just kind of thought I would never do it again unless it was somebody I really knew well and trusted and knew we had a good dynamic. So Jamie and I approached this that way. Hey, if we work good together, let's keep going. But if not, we'll break up. I'm sorry, I always think it's fun to turn it into you're the band or like it's a marriage or whatever, just because those are some long-term hard collaborations, bands and marriages. So Jamie probably hates it, but I always joke about it.
No, actually, I think it makes perfect sense because there's a certain amount of, especially in a creative endeavor, there's a certain amount of shared minds. Putting something out there, being an author is usually a solitary existence. So a lot of people don't see first products, first drafts and initial work product and early renditions of outlines. So when you bring somebody else into that environment as a collaborator, you're really opening yourself up to say, here's all the ugliness that nobody sees.
Yeah. How has this experience differed from other collaborative experiences?
My other collaboration is with my son. We wrote, and are writing still, a lit RPG series that's done pretty well. He's an avid gamer. I play games, but not to the level that he does. He has his own Twitch channel and stuff like that. We collaborate on the project. And then I do a lot of the heavy lifting from a writing stand, but then he goes through and does proofreading and adding more gaming elements that we don't initially get in there from my drafts. So that's how I've worked in the past. This was much more of a give and take, I think, for Nicole and I. I'll be interested to hear, her thoughts on this, but we really worked very closely together on the story beats and the outline for the short story. The idea was that Nicole would write the first draft and send it to me in a shared document. And then I would go through and, because it's written in my universe, I would go through and correct any elements that might be out of place for my universe, as well as tightening things up. And honestly, I haven't had to do much. She writes a really clean draft from that standpoint. And a lot of the stuff that got in there was right on target with what we had planned. So far, it's been pretty smooth. And I think from a meeting of the minds standpoint, we seem to be on the same page and pretty easygoing with working together.
Yeah, I agree. What was the part where you said I would be interested in what Nicole says? I don't remember.
Oh, I was just, saying that the process that we had come up with where we'd work together
Yeah.
on the outline, and then you would write the first draft. Seemed like a good way to do it, but I don't know if you feel like that's a good shared.
No, I like it. It's been cool. I've entertained other options about collaboration where maybe one person writes one chapter and then the next chapter is written by the other person. And I would be down to do that another time with someone if or with you. But I also have appreciated how we've done it where we plot together in a Zoom call and go over everything that we want to have in it. And I take notes and make sure I know the direction we both want to go and what Jamie's contributing, like what his ideas are, because he's more experienced in urban fantasy in terms of writing it, and it is in his universe, but it's a new character and a new setting in his universe. So it's been fun. And I think it's been energizing for me because Jamie is incredibly effusive and kind. When I send him a draft, I'm like, here it is. And he's like, this is amazing. And I'm like, yeah. So it's really edifying for me. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm so good. But obviously you read the first draft and you've been like, we need to go back to the drawing boards. But yeah, I've loved the process and it's fun to brainstorm because it's easy to get stuck down in the details and what happens next. So having someone with this mutual vision has been cool because he's, oh, let's do this way or let's do that. And I'm like, yeah, I like that.
And I'd like to add that I think one of the key things about any collaboration is a key designation of who's responsible. You need to have that planned out front. Who is going to write the first draft? How are you going to collaborate? And have a clear goal for what the outcome is. And I know for me, it was always supposed to be Nicole's character. I wanted her voice to be represented in this story. I didn't want it to be another one of my short stories. I wanted it to be a short story that had elements from my books and my universe, but was ostensibly hers from the start. So it's funny because we didn't even talk about point of view at all. I write third person and she wrote a first person story, which I thought was awesome and really got us into the mind of the character very quickly. I really fell in love with the character because of that. I think there's some fun things to explore there, but it all started because we really outlined exactly who was responsible for what. And that requires a lot of give and take. You can throw an idea out there, but you can't be so married to it that you aren't willing to give it up if the other person doesn't think it's going to work in the story.
Have you found out anything about yourselves through the process?
I don't know. My previous collaboration, it was done a completely different way. Jamie and I started right out of the gate having Zoom calls. So meeting face to face and getting a dynamic. My previous collaboration, I didn't do it that way. I knew the person, we had done some things together. We were friends, but there was no give and take. I acted more like almost like a ghostwriter, and he gave me directions and he gave me plot and he gave me some characters, and then I took over. Jamie and I, it feels more like a collaboration to me. After that experience, I was like, it's going to be a real collaboration if I ever do one again, because I didn't like that dynamic of feeling like a ghostwriter. That's not a collaboration to me. That's something different. Like you're getting hired. Jamie was cool about it, but I didn't even think to ask about point of view because everything I've read so far in urban fantasy, as I've studied the genre for my own urban fantasy, has been first person. So I just assumed like Jamie's of course would be in first person. And so he's like, it's not. It was an eye opener. I didn't know. And it was already written and he was cool and didn't insist on changing it to match his style of third person. I write in third person in my space opera, so I'm cool with both, but it was just this funny experience. One of the things overall I could say is I'm pretty chill. That's what I've learned. I don't mind taking a back seat or not being the leader. I already knew that, but if you want to collaborate, and I do, I think the thing I've learned is I can work with people. Like James said, writing is pretty solo, and so wondering if you have it in you to work together and not have to be the boss in a really egocentric way. What about you, Jamie? What have you learned?
I think for me, the big learning moment came when I was concerned that we weren't going to be able to rework things in time to get a submission in before the deadline. I was thinking of a way to gently pull the plug without hurting anybody's feelings. How happy I was when Nicole fought back and said, no, we're not going to give up on it. And let's see what we can do to make the changes that are needed. Maybe it doesn't need as much work as we think it does. Maybe it's a question of cutting, not necessarily writing new. I think that once that happened, I really felt great. I went into this conversation feeling like I was, like she said, breaking up the band, and came out the other end ready for another album.
Yeah.
That was a pleasant surprise for me. And as the only other collaboration I had with my son, where the dynamic is definitely different between father and son, this required me to be much more, we need to have a shared vision, and I needed to give up control rather than maintain control.
Given that this is someone else's anthology, you've had no control over the timescales that you've been working to. Do you think that's affected the way you've had to work together?
I was concerned that we weren't going to have enough time to rework it before the deadline. And Nicole fought back and said, we absolutely do. Let's give it a shot. The worst thing that can happen is we end up turning in something that doesn't get accepted, but at least we'll turn something in. We won't turn in junk. It just might not get accepted for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to just turn in garbage, but it's not garbage. It was not a horrible story. It just needed some work. And that's where we fell into making some changes and adjustments, and changing some pacing, really, was what we ended up doing.
Yeah, we just tried to make it a little more kick-ass, a little more active. That is probably one of my biggest things. I get really caught up in a character's head. I guess that's because that's how I live. You got to be proactive. I think we knew early on that we were going to be doing it. And I think I said it off into it on, this is going to be easy. This is going to be a cakewalk. We'll have this done in 2 weeks. And I wrote it pretty steadily and kept passing it over to Jamie and just finishing it up. And then I had a 10-day vacation in the middle of this process. I wanted it to be done before that, but I don't think it was. We were both kind of planning on a certain amount of words. I always make that mistake with a short story. Oh, it's a short story. How hard could it be? And so I always run out. They always end up taking way longer, and then this did as well. But I think that I actually work better with a deadline. I don't know how Jamie feels, but if I have too much time, I put it off and put it off and put it off because I've got other pressing matters. I'm a procrastinator. I get stuff done. It's just when you know your deadline, you know that you have time to wait and then do some other important things. And then boom, you've got to get that done. And so it's boom, that's it. I got to do it now. So we're right there. I can't actually remember what the deadline is. And I know I'm getting it to Jamie this week, but is the deadline
Next week, I believe.
I like it. I'm glad we have a deadline so we can get it done and get it off our plate and go, okay, that's in the, what's an expression? That's in the can. Was that an expression?
That's a film term. So that works for me.
Okay, cool. I was thinking of a different kind of can. I'm glad it's a film canister.
Yep.
I was thinking of another
curious
can.
about that part because I worked with John Evans on the Hellcats anthology. And I think if we were to work together again, it would probably be quite different because we were on a ridiculously tight time scale, and he would suggest something and I'd be like, yeah, okay. And we pretty much agreed to everything really quickly. Whereas I think if we'd had more time, we might have been, hang on, wait, what if? And the conversations would have been longer, and we'd probably have ended up with a different story, not a different story altogether, but certainly with different elements in it, simply because we were so short on time. So I was just curious, What would you say are the cons of collaborating, or the biggest cons, since we've done a lot of prose?
I'll throw one out and then you can throw one out. Keeping lines of communication open is a challenge. So it can be a con if you're not a good communicator. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do a Zoom call, because I think sometimes a lot of things get lost in body language. By seeing somebody face to face, it's an opportunity to really read each other's expressions and energy. I think that helps.
I totally agree. And I think I've really appreciated that about working with Jamie, because we send missives back and forth on Messenger, but they're usually really short. And then when there's something that we need to talk about, he's always suggested a Zoom meeting. And this last one where he was worried about breaking up the band, I asked him, is this a serious meeting? And he was like, no, it's just fine. It's fine. I was like, he's worried about the criticism, what the beta reader said. I kind of got that vibe. I gave it to some beta readers and they were like, it's great, I want to read more. They all loved it. No one gave me feedback that was like, it's boring. No one was like, it needs to get to the action quicker or anything like that. I appreciated it. My instinct is defensive initially. Even in a face-to-face meeting, I can be a little brusque. And I was worried because Jamie had his things to say, and then I had to temper my instinctive defensiveness. I had to really shut that down. It's good that I've been working on that in my real marriage. I'm just joking. I'm very self-deprecating. But anyway, he was cool about it. I'm glad he was glad that I thought to go, no, we're not going to trash the story. I'm not putting it down for a year to come back to later. We're doing this now. And I don't think we should give up. I'm glad he was glad because I was like, he's going to hate this. He's probably done with this. That's what I was thinking. So I feel like we're on the dating game.
No, it's true, because I really think that was important that we had that conversation. I think that there has to be an exit plan to just make sure that people remain friends. Business is business and friends is friends, and nothing is personal when you make a business decision. I think that's why we needed to have that conversation. But I was in love with the character. I still am. Whatever we come up with the story, I think this character has room to grow into a full series if that's something we decide to do down the road, because she's just fun.
Yeah. I hope I gave you room for that, because I agree. I don't want to arm wrestle you and being like, no, I'm staying. We're finishing this. If you're like, no, I don't want to anymore, I would be like, all right, fine. And then I would sulk and walk out the door. I'm just kidding. I give you the silent treatment. I'm just joking. I'm joking. I never would do the silent treatment to anyone.
Now, I physically do have a contract.
I didn't even think of that.
We will before we turn it in.
Okay.
Because that's important. We've been writing on spec right now, sharing things as an understood. We had a brief conversation about how we were going to handle that up front, but we will have a contract because I don't do anything without one. It'll be simple and we'll look at it. It's not going to be anything that we haven't already discussed, but it needs to be written down for both of us to protect both parties.
For sure. Yeah. We talked about it and I just forgot that we hadn't done one.
We'll write it together essentially, because we've already had the discussion. I'm not going to spring anything. We're just going to write it together and make sure that it's everything we agreed upon, and then we'll both sign it, and then that'll be our contract. I'll make sure that there's things in there about whatever happens down the road with the story, copyright issues and stuff like that.
My brother-in-law did the breakup contract for us when I broke up with that other guy. He's a lawyer. I wanted my brother-in-law to write our initial contract that I had with that guy, and he didn't want it. There are some contracts out there circulating for indie authors for collaborations that are really weak. They don't have enough information in them, but I'm down with that. From my perspective, we're on the same page. Unless he turns into a villain with like a twirly mustache. And I don't think he's going to be like, Nicole, I get all the rights to this and you're in the dark.
So I assume if you choose to continue with a series, it will be a reader magnet or something. But when it comes out, if you decide not to go with a series, what will you do with it? The story when it comes out of the anthology.
I don't actually know, how long do they stay in the anthology? Is it
I think
a year?
Is it 6 months?
6 months, I think. Yeah.
Mm.
So at the end
know.
of 6 months, I don't know. That'll have to be worked into the contract, obviously. I think it would be fun to give away to any of my readers that didn't buy the original anthology, because that's what I'm going to promote it for, and see what my reader response is. If my readers come back and love it, that'll be an indication of whether it's worth moving forward, at least from my readership standpoint.
I already know if Jamie's like, let's do a series, I'd be like, yeah, I'm in. I might not do it. I not be able to do it till like next year. I have an urban fantasy stuff coming out this year under this pen name. It's just my initials. It's not like a secret, but it's for the Amazon different algorithm thingy wingy. I know my readers that read it loved it. People are gonna like it. Jamie likes it. He's got great taste. I don't know if you liked it, Elaine. You must have liked it. Elaine, I just don't see how you couldn't.
Exactly. I did. The only button it didn't press for me was that there were huge chunks without dialogue, and I'm crazy for dialogue. Mm-hmm. So, and that was the only thing that I fed back. Otherwise, I think the premise is brilliant.
Yeah. Well, we're working through those problems, and it'll be great when it's all done.
I'll look forward to reading it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reading it.
Thank you for sending it. That's me got to the end of my questions.
That was fun.
Well,
Or are you
thanks
gonna?
I hope this helps other authors
Oh,
in
yeah.
some way with the collaborations. Obviously, I think there's probably as many ways to do this as there are partnerships out there, but maybe you'll be able to take some elements of what we've done and make it successful.
Yeah, and I'm always happy to plug Jamie because he's amazing to work with. And I feel really lucky that he was into my idea, which became our idea, because he's been super fun to work with. And he's restored my faith in humanity that not everyone's lame.
Well, you make it easy to work with you too, Nicole. So I
Thank
have
you.
to say I feel the same. So
Oh, you're so nice. Thanks. I appreciate that.